Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast.
Each episode, we invite extraordinary guests who are masters of their craft. They're innovators, entrepreneurs, and of course, motorcycle enthusiasts who have made their mark in the world.
They share their stories, insights, and hard-earned wisdom, giving you a front row seat to the strategies and experiences that shape their successes.
So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for an exhilarating ride as we dive deep into the minds of these exceptional individuals.
Along the way, we'll uncover powerful strategies, gain fresh perspectives, and explore the limitless possibilities of what it takes to be an American mastermind.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast. My name is Rob Adams. I am the host tonight. I am joined by my co-host, Trent Spafford. Trent, how you doing?
Hey, really great. Good to be here.
All right, Trent. And then we have a special guest, Matt DeHart. Did I say that right?
You did. DeHart.
DeHart.
Depends the day.
Yeah, okay, all right.
The Bears.
You're good.
The Bears, DeHart. Glad you're here, Matt. I'm excited to have you as a guest on our podcast. We've got almost 40 podcasts put together of different guests, and so you're joining quite an elite crowd here in Utah, and so welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I've known you for a few years, Rob, and I've seen some good things, so happy to be here and share anything that might be beneficial.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let me just tell the audience really quickly. I met Matt at a networking event. We would go, they'd have it once a month and over at the community college or the Gail Miller Center there in Sandy. And the way that it would work is we'd sit at a table with 5 or 6 other people, and everybody would get to do their little elevator pitch. And then we'd go around and we would listen to the gentleman that kind of ran the show. He would tell the same story every month about Disneyland. And then he would kind of hand it off again, and there would be we would all talk again. We'd have a minute to talk and share what our needs were and where we were going. And then after that, during that month, that group would then meet again off-site and talk about business and some different things. And it was really good. I met a lot of great people. But one of the things I admired about you right away was I talked about Thanksgiving's heroes, and you afterwards, like after everybody had kind of said and done their part and they were walking out the door, you came up and you said, "What do I need to do to get involved?" Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen that often. I have a lot of people that are like, "Oh, that's a great story. It sounds great. Let me know if you need any help." You were like, "No." Mm-hmm. "What do you need?" And I was just like, "Well, this, and that." And you were like, "Well, I can help with this and I can help with that." And and I was just so grateful because there's a lot of people that show up on the day when the bread is made, but they don't show up to help me gather the wheat and help me to plow the fields. And you were willing to do some work that way. So you came and delivered some food that your first year. You brought your family, isn't that correct?
I did.
Can you tell me about your experience?
It was, well, when you first talked about Thanksgiving heroes, it made me think there was one time in my wife and my marriage that we were struggling and somebody dropped off a Thanksgiving meal. Oh. And we didn't need it, but I just remember the feeling we had. And I was like, I want to do something like that. Everybody does stuff around Christmas.
Yeah.
But Thanksgiving, that's when everybody's eating. I mean, food's more important than gifts. Yeah. And so we jumped in, and I told my family, I said, "Hey, we're driving up to Salt Lake, and we're going to deliver meals." And they're like, "What? What are we doing?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. We're just going to go deliver meals." So I loaded my kids up, my wife. I said, "Guess what? We're going to lunch afterwards." And they're like, "Okay, we're in." And we went up, and all 3 families we went to were Hispanic. And I served a church mission, so I speak Spanish.
Oh, perfect.
I served in Peru, so my kids are staring at me speaking Spanish, and they're like,
"What's going on?
What's wrong with Dad? Is he having a stroke or what?" But it was incredible. We walked away from that, and my kids are like, "Wow, people live like this." And I said, "You have no idea. These people are in better positions than a lot of other people in the world." And I said, "You guys have it pretty good, don't you? Are you going to complain about Thanksgiving dinner this year?" And they're like, no, we're good. And they were hooked. Now they ask me, when are we going up? When are we going to go see Rob? When are we going to go throw 180 pounds of food in our car and deliver it to people? And so, yeah, it was a great experience.
Oh, man. I asked that to people who've delivered before because it reminds me of why I do it. It's so important. It's such a big deal. And you're talking about going from entitlement to gratitude, these lessons that kids can't be told. You can't tell this like, "Hey, you're lucky."
Yeah.
No one hears that, but when they see it, then it's undeniable.
Yeah.
So thanks for being a part of it.
Well, thank you. It's an incredible group. I love it. Anyone that has felt that experience wants to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's huge. I actually talked to a lady today on my drive up here who I told them where I was going, and she goes, "We got a meal from him one year."
What?
Yeah, on the drive up here today. So she said, "Say thank you." It meant a lot. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
So,
Oh, man. I love that. I've actually bumped into people before, and when they find out who I am, they're like, oh, my neighbor or it's interesting how many lives this touches along the way. So that's the magic, right?
yeah.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids, ranging
kids?
from 21 down to 10. So
Wow.
3 boys and a little girl at the end. And it's usually the 2 younger boys and my little girl. But one year we got my older son there, and it really had an impact on him.
Yeah.
The reason I start with Thanksgiving's Heroes, number one, I'm selfish. I love to talk about Thanksgiving's Heroes. But one of the big reasons is that Matt is an owner of something called The Villager magazine. I'm going to hold that up there if you're watching on our YouTube channel. And in The Villager, if he has the space, he donates that space to Thanksgiving's Heroes. Here's our ad. If you can take a good look at that. Look at that beautiful little face, those little eyes. And it talks about feed local families, 5,000 families in need. Donate today. It's our 10-year anniversary. And so
Wow.
it's
It's a lot of food.
It's a lot of food. Yeah, it's a lot of families fed. So thank you for supporting Thanksgiving's Heroes. Why is it important to you and your organization to support local charities? Because I'm not the only one. I'm not. You support Dahlia's kids. Is that right?
We do. We support Dahlia's Hope, and owning this magazine. It's been a fun investment for my family and I, because we get to go around to local businesses, see where they're at. But at the end of the month, we always have some extra pages. And I would rather donate it to a cause such as Thanksgiving Heroes and Dahlia's Hope and some of these organizations, because if there's anything I can do with my existing network that can help you guys out, we want to do it. It's a lot better than donating it to somebody I have no idea what they're going to use the page for.
Right. Right. Well, the reason that I bring it up is because I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you ever want to do business with a company, do business with a company that's doing good in the community. Yeah. And so I'm kind of doing a shout out for you right now, Matt, because
Thank you.
This is important stuff. That we're changing the world in Thanksgiving's Heroes, and we can't do it without your support. And so grateful for that. You're from Utah.
Yeah.
You grew up in
Born and raised.
Utah County?
I did. I spent a good chunk of my childhood in Provo, and then my parents moved us my freshman year to Woodland Hills, which is just above Salem and Spanish Fork. So I went to Spanish Fork High School. Go Dons.
Perfect. And growing up in Utah, you've seen a lot of changes now. You've been here for a minute and was watching your town grow up. How do you feel about the city, comparatively speaking? Like, you've got these 4 kids, you're raising them in the same area. Like, what are your thoughts?
It's actually been really fun, because I spent 11 years in Colorado, from college till about 10 years ago. So my kids grew up outside of Utah, and we came home, and I moved back home. And the one thing my kids don't enjoy is I know someone every time we go to the grocery store, and they're like, "Dad will never shut up. He talks to everyone." So it's been fun having my kids see the people that were influential in my life. And they get to grow up with them now. They get to see people that knew my wife and I when we were teenagers and still respect us. So we must have done something right. But it's been good, and now we're close. We live next door to my mom and just down the road from my in-laws, so we have a lot more family now, a lot more positive support around my kids. It's been a good adjustment.
That's great, having a community like that in your life. I moved 7 times when I was in high school. Did you know that about me, Trent?
Oh, wow.
Just in high school. So for 4 years, well, that was what high school should have taken. But
Yeah, right.
Hey, we won't ask how many years it really took.
Yeah, I was the only sophomore with a mortgage.
And full facial hair.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man. It's interesting when I talk to people who have lived in a community their whole lives. I always wonder, like, what is that like to have the perspective of, like, you remember me when I was a little boy, and I remember when your kids were little, and it's an amazing thing for me to concentrate on. So growing up in Utah, you went on a mission to Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful place. I spent last February. I spent a whole month in Peru.
That's what you said, and you spent time where I spent 6 months in Cusco and the Andes there.
Did you guys know Cusco is above 10,000 feet? There's like 3 million people that live in this town, and it's above 10,000 feet. Now, we here in the valley, we're right at about 5,500 feet above sea level. So the top of our mountain where our ski resorts are is where Cusco is.
Yeah, Solitude's about 10,000 feet.
Yeah, and there's a 3 million person city at that height.
Yeah, it is. We used to run. I'd get the worst headaches I've ever had because there's just no oxygen up there.
And they've just acclimated to it.
Yeah. And so I spent time in the Sacred Valley. Did you get to go down through there? And
I lived in a town called Sequaning, and it's right in the middle of the Sacred Valley.
So the Sacred Valley is this little cut kind of like right up in the Andes Mountains. It's named perfectly. It is just the most beautiful little Garden of Eden. And there's these fortresses up on the top of these crazy mountains that don't make sense. They're not like Utah mountains. They're like straight up and down. They're like fingers sticking out of the ground, and then there's a fortress on top of it. And they have stones up there that weigh like 13 tons that they got up there magically. I don't know how they did it.
I have no idea.
It's an unbelievable place. I've traveled all over the world, and Peru is one of the places that wasn't oversold. When I went there, I wasn't like, okay.
Could have been a little better.
Could have been better. The whole time I was there, I was just gobsmacked. I was like, this is ridiculous. How did they do this? And amazing. We went to Machu Picchu, of course. Yeah. And they were having some civil unrest down there, and so there wasn't anyone in Machu Picchu. They usually have 3,000 to 5,000 people in this little tiny prehistoric town, and there was maybe 300 of us in this town.
Wow.
And I play the harmonica, and it talks about in the scriptures in the Bible, it talks about where people could talk and they could speak to whole, like thousands of people. You've heard that?
Yeah.
There was a spot there where it was kind of an amphitheater and nobody was there, and there's a sign that's like no clapping, no whistling. So I got my harmonica out and I riffed in this place, and there was a couple of the guards that came around and they like had this look, and then they were like, okay.
We're okay.
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah.
This is nice, and the harmonics were it was incredible. It's hard to explain it, unless you get to go to one of those places. But if you have a chance to go to Peru, eat some guinea pig and have a wonderful time.
Yeah, that is oversold. It's horrible.
Yeah, if I go, I'll get it again just because I want Trent to get it. He doesn't know any better. You know what I mean?
It's like eating horse or dog. I couldn't do it.
It's skin and bones.
Yeah.
Skin and bones. They're called kui.
Because that's the sound they make.
Yeah.
They're supposed to make that. That's their noise. And they have a town in the middle of the Sacred Valley. It starts with an M. And that's their specialty. You pull in and like there's restaurants down both sides of the street that just cook kui. Yeah.
Kui.
Yeah, that's about what. And they run around people's house and they're their garbage disposal. They'll just throw the eggshells on the ground and these things will eat it. And
there are no parasites there.
And there's no guinea pig. There's no guinea pig in the United States that can compare to the size. These are like
they're like mini dogs.
They're like rabbits.
Huge.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah.
And they cook them, they grill them, and then they flash fry them, and then they bring it out to you, and it has its little hands and
they're still on there. The
its
paws.
little teeth, and its eyes are looking at you.
Yeah, as you're pulling those paws off, and they just snap.
Wow.
Yeah,
it was
fun.
terrible.
Delectable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Worth it.
We are not overselling this.
Yeah.
My mouth is watering right now. Let's go.
But it's one of those things. Like if you're gonna go there,
you got to eat one.
You gotta eat a guinea pig. That's just.
Yeah, they got to have a kui restaurant somewhere in downtown Salt Lake.
I bet they do. They're moving up.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen it at the Peruvian restaurants. They keep that off the menu. That's you have to give the signal, and they take you into the back.
You gotta know someone there.
Yep.
Flash the sign.
Yep.
So now you've come off your mission. You're home again. Life is good. You meet your beautiful wife. Were you going to school? Was it the BYU relationship?
No, we met each other in high school.
Oh, that's right.
Well, we didn't even go to the same high school. We just lived next to each other in Woodland Hills. So I liked her at one point. She liked me at another point. Luckily, we didn't date and screw it up before I went on my mission. And got home and we were really good friends and decided being friends was a lot better to get married as friends than not. And so we got married almost 23 years ago. So,
What's your secret? Is that the secret? Staying friends?
I guess it's lots of challenges. I think's our secret, is not blaming each other during the challenges.
Not blaming each other, so forgiving one another and leaning in. That is tricky. 23 years to be married. I admire that. I've been married 23 years, but not all in a row.
Yeah, I know people that have been married 23 times.
Yeah, a couple times the same person.
Yeah.
All right, well, Matt, then, so you're married now, you're having these kids, life is going along well. Did you start out in the financial planning world, or?
No. If you would have told me that I would have been in this financial world, I would have laughed at you. When I was in college, I started dipping my toes into it, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to mess with people's finances. I actually went into pharmaceutical sales. So after graduating BYU, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals hired me and moved me to Colorado. And I spent the next 15 years in the medical world, anywhere from Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. I was an international medical director for a medical device company. And so I ran everything outside of the U.S. border, and I loved what I did. We just got laid off all the time. You'd have a job, then you wouldn't have a job. You'd have a job, and then you didn't have a job. And so my wife and I had to, again, this is after 5 times telling my wife we didn't have any money, and she's still with me. That is a huge, it shows how good of a person she is. So,
Well, when you think of pharmaceutical sales and, you're this international director, you think, wow, that's got to be really good pay.
yeah.
And maybe it was in great moments, but then it just kind of like, when you get laid off, like that's a tough gig.
Yeah. Well, you get used to that money, and then the next day you don't have it. And so you're going, okay, how do we maneuver our finances? How do we make the house payment? How do we pay our bills? And luckily we never missed a house payment. Our credit score never tanked, but we were cutting out everything. We're like, okay, kids, TV, gone. You're watching DVDs now, and you're cutting all those things, selling cars, doing whatever you can to survive. And we tried the unemployment once, and I swore I'd never do that again. But yeah, it was challenging. And finances, we had to learn how to maneuver those correctly.
And it's interesting that you should bring that up as we look into today's current situation. Groceries are 31% more. Interest rates have gone for mortgages have gone from 3 to 7% on average. The median price 3 years ago was $240,000, and now it's $600,000.
Crazy.
And so everything is more expensive. It's more expensive today to be me than it's ever been. And so when I say that out loud, there's a lot of crunching going on out there.
Yeah.
What would be some of the advice you could give to these people that are, they're working their tails off, they're doing all of the right things that we were told that we should be doing, but here we are. What's some of the things that what advice would you give them?
I'll tell you, experience we had. One of the times I lost my job, I had to take a job that gave me a 50% pay cut.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it hurt. I remember I actually had to dig into our reserves, and I had to dig into my 401k. And I was about in tears the first time I called my financial planner and said, hey, I need money. I need it. And he's like, well, you're going to pay 22% taxes and 10% early withdrawal fee. And I'm like, I don't care. I need it.
Yeah.
And so we did it. And it was there. The advice I'd give people is hang in there. If you're willing to hustle, if you're willing to hang in there, if you don't add extra emotional issues all the time, like blaming each other and fighting about your finances, and sit down and see where you can cut back, what's important to you. Take on a second job if you have to. It doesn't mean this is going to be this way all the time. We get in a mindset where we believe the world's going to be the same as it is right now. So we believe that interest rates are going to stay high or groceries are going to stay high. But let's think about 2020, 2019. Think of how good things were back then. They're going to get back there, but we've got to weather the storm, and we got to weather it over and over. That's actually why I got into financial coaching and advising people. Is I hate the feeling of not having money more than anything else on earth, especially when with 4 kids and a wife, and I was the primary income earner, and I hate it. I hate seeing people go through that, and that's why I try to coach them into a position where get in a good position when you're making money, when you're doing well. That's the time you need to take the most action to prep for the future. Get some lines of credit. Make sure your credit cards are paid off and they're clear, because the storm's coming. That's one thing I can guarantee. There is going to be a storm in your life that knocks you down, kicks you a few times, and waits for you to get back up. And so if you're in that position, when it knocks you down, the finances aren't the big issue. It's how do I deal with the other issues we have?
Well, let me just, I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a quick second here. Yeah. You know, I'm a young man. I've been making pretty good money. I've been doing all right. Like that's not going to change. Like I'm okay. I've got it covered. I mean, I've had enough. I'm always going to have enough. Why would I pay someone or pay extra to do something with the money I don't need?
Yeah. I love you saying that. That was me.
Yeah.
I'm this arrogant kid getting out of BYU, working for Pfizer.
Killing it.
I'm in 3 years, I doubled my income. I'm like, gosh, I got the Midas touch. I'm a rock star. I'm like, yeah.
I'm bulletproof.
Where do I go from here? I'm like, I don't need savings. I don't need to prep. We're always going to have money. Interest rates were, I think they were at 5% when I bought my first house. I'm like, yeah, 5%. We're killing
golden.
It. The next day, Pfizer hands me my pink slip and says, you don't have a job anymore. I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I was one of the top sales reps on my team. I tried to analyze it. I'm like, what did I do wrong? They just drew out of a hat. That was the only way to make it so that they didn't have any pushback or legal issues. And it's hard. When you're making money, it's really hard to think about what would I do if I lost everything tomorrow. But that's the best time. I would love for my phone to ring off the hook with people doing well, because it usually rings when people feel the pinch.
Yeah.
That's the pain point that they need to feel to pick up the phone and say, Matt, I need help with my finances.
Well, and a lot of people that are, when you think of a financial advisor, you think, well, that's for the rich. That's for the people that have already arrived, and all this, that, the other, the images that we have around a financial advisor, and I don't qualify. So these young, as Rob said, the younger young man or a young lady, like my daughter's putting away, I think $75 a month in some sort of an IRA right now, and if that grows, it's going to do well for her every single month, and she's like 21. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to people that are like, well, I don't have that kind of money, but just to get started, even small?
Yeah. Well, first of all, she's ahead of the game. If she's putting $75 away, $75 is better than nothing. And I've got a 21-year-old right now. He's got a chunk of money he could go buy his first house if he really wanted to, and then start renting it to his roommates, to his friends. The younger generation, if they can get in and learn these concepts of how to maneuver your money, how to pay down debt as fast as you can, utilizing the money you currently have, and then learn how to buy assets. I mean, I don't do what I do because I like saving money. I do what I do because I want other people to pay for our vacation, or other people to pay for the vehicle I want to drive. I want that money making money every night. If you're a 21-year-old kid and you can get an investment property paying you while you sleep, how much easier is it if you get laid off and you already have the other investments providing that income for you? How much easier is it if you want to do a career that may not pay as much, a first responder, a school teacher, an artist? How much easier is it to follow that dream when you got money coming in? It's much easier to say, hey, I'm going to do this. I don't have to run to that extra job. I've got some investments that are paying me and helping me make it through these hard times. Makes it a lot easier when you've got that at a younger age.
Right. That's when you got to start. Well, The other thing is just need to start. That's what I've always learned is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're 53. Start.
Yeah.
Start doing it, because even if it keeps you from having to use your credit cards to buy the tires when they blow out, you're prepared for that incident. Silly example, but you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and again, when was the best time to plant a tree? It was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
The next best time is today. It's the same with investments. You can keep saying, I'm too old. I've watched people in their 60s set themselves up for retirement within a couple of years. Retirement is, do I have enough money to live? It doesn't mean, do I have to have $10 million in the bank? It means I need to have that residual income paying for the lifestyle I want to have.
Yeah. That is the tricky part, I would imagine, is defining the lifestyle that I want to have. Now, when you do that as a financial planner, how are you able to forecast that in 2024, groceries are going to be 31% more than they were in 2020? Yeah. Like, what are we doing to insulate ourselves if we're clear enough, if we have enough future vision to say, okay, in order for me to do what I want, I need $10,000 a month. I'm just making up a number.
Yeah.
To live on.
Like what's number one? What's the first thing? What's the second thing? Because there's lifestyle and then there's, barely making it.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the first things I do with people is set goals. What do you want? And we set goals ranging from, I want to be able to take my wife to a nice dinner, to I want to be able to have the equivalent of $30,000 a month. And then we work backwards from there. So if we need $30,000 a month, how many investment properties do we need? How much in paper assets do we need? How much is Social Security going to cover? Do I have a pension? And we work backwards from there. And that gives us a finish line to get to. And it's really hard to say what's going to happen in the future. Are we going to see another 30% spike? It was rare. Are we going to see inflation jump by 8-9%? It's rare for that to happen, but we've seen it happen now. We know it can. But the thing I like about real estate or assets, fixed assets or tangible assets, is those go up in value similar to inflation going up. If you've got a rental property, you're going to increase rent as inflation goes up. Yeah. That helps you combat a little of that issue. If you've got a good investment that's making you 20% or 15%, it's hopefully going to keep going up.
I read an article this last week about rentals, that the rent for a new person coming in increased 41% in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I did not know it was that high.
It's nutty high, but it's because there's no place you can't just step in and buy a piece of property unless you're like your son, where you've prepared. Yeah. Most of the folks I talk to that want to buy a house, they're ill prepared. I'll say, okay, I see you're looking at houses in Riverton. Mm-hmm. When do you want to buy a house? Oh, we want to get into one right away. Our lease is ending in June. Okay, cool. Have you talked to a lender? No.
Are you pre-approved?
Do you have any money for a down? Mm-mm. No.
I get paid next week.
They're one paycheck away, and then well, how much is your rent right now? We're paying about $2,100. We'd like to keep our payment around $2,100. There are no houses available with no money down at $2,100. That's a unicorn. There's no such thing. And so these people are trapped. Mm-hmm. Effectively, they're in rental bondage is kind of the way I look at it. Like they can't get out of it.
Mm-hmm. I had heard that Utah is like one of the top 10 most expensive places to live right now in the whole country.
Yeah. And that just happened within the last couple of years. Yeah. It used to be a pretty economical place to be.
Yep. About 7 years ago when the Olympics came.
Yeah.
Thank you, Olympics.
Hey, they're coming again.
The secret's out.
I have another question for you, though.
Yeah.
So, like, with what you see coming in the future, there's a lot of people out there are very scared about the economy, about the presidential election coming up, a transfer of power, wars, all this kind of stuff. If somebody gets really caught up in that, it kind of overpowers them.
Paralyzes them, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Completely.
Not only is it analysis paralysis, but it's worse than that because it's the fear of it and not making a decision. What do I do? When you were back in BYU and then you got this job at Pfizer and then you got let off and this happened 5 times, you've got kids, you moved to Colorado, you come back. What made you decide, I'm going to do this on my own? Obviously, you're self-employed and you're not working for anybody else. So there was, this moment of
A jump.
yeah. What made you decide to make that jump?
It was a tough one, and you'll laugh because when I first got married, so my wife, her dad is a big entrepreneur. He's had his own business most of their life, and she actually made me promise I wouldn't be an entrepreneur when we first got married. My dad worked for somebody. He worked for Little Giant Ladders for my entire life.
Great company.
And so I knew what it was like to work for somebody, and I'm like, sweet, I'll work with Pfizer. I'm good. I'll retire with them. And after you get laid off 5 times, that is not the most secure route for me. It was horrible. I was more scared of working for somebody than going off on my own because to get let go, it was either me or my wife saying, hey, you're done.
Yeah.
So after about 3 of those layoffs, she said, hey, you may want to consider breaking that promise. And after 5 of them, she said, yeah, we're done. It's time to create our own world, our own economy or finances. But it was scary. It took me having a complete mindset change and being able to see what I wanted and how to do it. And I used to be somebody that was tied up in politics and, okay, what if this happens? What if this happens? I can tell you now, I opened my eyes in the community I live in. What am I going to do different? What am I going to do to make this place better? Because I can't control what the election's going to do. I can't control which country gets bombed next, but I can control what I'm going to do with my family, what I teach them, how I help them financially, because I don't know what the future holds, but I do know what today holds, and I can help people get through today. And if you can get on top of your finances, who cares if gas goes up? Who cares if it comes down or groceries go up? Because guess what? We just maneuver some of our investments a little bit different, and we make up the difference on our own. So
Yeah.
That's a good answer. The illusion of security in the W-2 world is a real thing.
it is. Golden handcuffs are real.
Golden handcuffs.
I've had them.
Yeah.
And it's, what do I do? Where do I get insurance? Well, there's an answer to everything.
Who's going to pitch in on my retirement?
Yeah.
All these things are like,
Yeah.
It's not that you'll be okay. In fact, you'll be better if you can weather it. It's not for everybody.
No, it's not. And again, I'm not pushing everybody that direction. Don't quit your job tomorrow, please.
Yeah.
If you're not in the position to do it. But
There's great jobs out there.
there are. And I've had them. I've had them sitting there, and I loved seeing that paycheck coming in, and I selling medication. I could increase my commission. But again, when you run your own destiny, you figure out how much you need, and you can 10 times the income you generated with a job. And so if I need more money for my retirement, well, I'm going to double my income next year and put it into retirement.
So do you help people put together strategies of like trusts and corporations? Do you help with kind of structuring a financial plan?
Yeah, we do. And the reason being is this one's actually near and dear to my heart. So the reason I live in Utah now is 10 years ago in June, my dad passed away. So I told you he worked at a company his whole life. He was flying back from a business trip from Florida, had a pulmonary embolism and died in the Utah airport.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, just out of the blue, 58 years old, on my wife and my anniversary.
Oh, man.
Wow.
And so
58.
58. And he was in great health. And
Was it just from the long flight and the blood
Yeah.
clot in his legs?
yeah, it was a DVT that developed in his legs. And I figure he probably had a window seat and probably didn't want to move during the flight and had that DVT. And when he stood up, it broke free. And it was big enough that there was nothing they could do.
Wow.
So my mom was devastated. Luckily, he had life insurance. He had no debt and left my mom in a pretty good position. But we didn't know what we were doing. We're like, oh, she's got this money now. What do we do? Do we do a will? What the heck's a trust? And we had to go in and learn how to set these things up. So we got her a will and a trust and made sure she was in a good position. We had to figure out how to do all these things, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had to set her up with a financial planner and start investing that life insurance money. So she needed that money for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, okay, people don't know this. I feel like
How old was your mom at the time?
She was the same age. They were both 58.
Okay.
And so she didn't get Social Security for a little while.
Yeah.
And he had some 401k money, but it wasn't a lot. She got early widow Social Security at 60, but that was a big question. Do we pull it now or do we wait? We had to make all these decisions on our own, and really we had decent guidance, I guess, but we had to ask. The funeral home gave us a good financial planner. That's where we were getting our information from. And that's what really got us to move back here to be closer to family and her. And she lives next door now. We built houses side by side. But that made me think about it more. I was like, okay, what about people? What happens if my dad would have passed away with no life insurance and my mom had nothing? How do I help people get into a position where they're protected and taken care of and know what they're doing in these situations? So how do I help someone who lost a spouse figure out where to put that? And so I don't invest for people because I want to send them to somebody who can. I want to be as subjective as possible in which direction I push people. And that's why I have the connections to get them to the right people that can be trusted, that are going to take care of my mom and your mom and your dad or whomever is dealing with that loss. Because it makes you do stupid things when you have a loss and you have to make decisions. When
you don't have time to do your research.
No.
You don't care. You just wanted to get it done.
So
was that the trigger that after you learned all these things with your mom and your dad's death that kind of triggered you to go, wow, let's just jump in on this and do this for a career?
It was the first thing that really pushed me into that direction. And then I started researching real estate, and I was looking into those house flipping programs. I went to a couple of them.
Armando Montalongo or something like that.
And I laughed. I'm like, how much is this? Well, that'll be $50,000. How do I get it? Oh, we're going to show you how to stack 50 credit cards to be able to pull this. And I said, okay, can I still buy a house after? And they're like, oh, we don't think so. And I said, well, I guess that's not for me. But again, those are the people
You'll pay for it in your
help.
first deal.
Yeah,
that you can't get.
Yeah.
You're like, how do I get the down payment? Oh, it's okay. Just go talk to people. Well, I don't have a rich uncle. Unless you have rich people that are willing to hand you stupid money. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yep. It's not.
But those guys made a lot of money selling the pipe dream.
Ooh, they did. And that's where
a hollow pipe dream.
Oh, and it was. And I found a guy to coach me for a reasonable price, and I learned how to flip. And I used to flip trailer homes and fix them up and carry the notes. And I sold those to a lot of Spanish-speaking people because I loved it. Would speak Spanish, and they paid me well. They always paid on time, and I was the bank. But yeah, it took me down a path that got me to here, and it's a longer story than I share, but it had a lot of bumps and a lot of things that happened, but I could not be more grateful.
So what is your piece in the puzzle then? So you refer people, you're not writing the policies,
No.
you're not doing that yourself.
No.
So why would I not just go direct? Why would I come to somebody like you to learn versus going direct?
Yeah, because a lot of the people that are going to get the policies and doing it, they don't know the difference between a term life or a whole life and which one's best for them. They don't know. They may have $50, they may have $75 to invest, but how do we get $1,000 a month to invest? We're going to double, triple, quadruple that amount. Or how do I build my credit score up so that I can get into my first house? What is credit score? How do I save up money? People always ask me, what's the ROI? Well, the ROI is going to be, it can be millions of dollars by the time you're paying down debt, you're investing more. A lot of what we do is light that fire. It's the best part of my job is when I sit in front of somebody and their eyes go from skeptical to,
wait a second,
this is incredible. I just had it happen last week, and I pointed it out. I said, your eyes changed. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, it's the best part of my job, when they're glistening, you see it. Before they're like, okay, we're talking finances. We're not supposed to be doing this. And then when you see them buy that first property, I had a lady come up today that I've been coaching for a year. She's single. She graduated and she's a chiropractor, doing really well. And she came up and she goes, Matt, we talked about my house last week. We can do this, can't we? We can do this by the end of the year. And I said, yeah, you can. I said, you're in a great position. You've done a good job getting here, and she's going to get into her first house. People say, how do young kids get into a house? Well, you get financially prepared. And then they go talk to Rob and figure out how to utilize all the first-time home buyer programs and get in.
Oh, yeah. I see a tremendous value in knowing the right people. For example, that first-time home buyer program. Like, I have lenders that are, that's their bread and butter. They're really good at that. Then I have other lenders that they only want to deal with veterans, which is great. That's wonderful. That veterans, they need the help.
Yeah.
And so it's really good to be able to put the person with the right person, that person that I would trust my mom with, kind of a thing. So that really resonated with me. That's awesome. As you are putting together their financial plans, what is the biggest obstacle you run into with most of your clients?
The biggest obstacle is belief.
What do you mean?
It's their belief that they can do better. A lot of people have been beat up. I told you my story. It took me a lot of time to believe that I could overcome this, that I could get into an investment property. And a lot of my job is helping them understand that you can do it. If I did it, if your neighbor did it, everybody has an uncle or an aunt that went out and bought investment properties. How do you think they did it? They sucked it up. They got the coaching, or they had extra money, and helping them change that mindset and that belief. And when they do, it's incredible. When I remember one year, we were sitting at this retreat for the company I was working, brought everybody in that did really well in sales, and they're giving this whole presentation on money. And at the time, my wife and I, we hadn't cash flowed for a year and a half. And we're looking at each other, and the first step was be cash flow positive. And I looked at her and I said, wow, we don't even make the first step. And when we left, I told her, I said, I want to buy a investment property by the end of the year. And she goes, what? We're not even cash flowing yet. How are we going to do that? And I said, I don't know. We're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. Well, October 2020 rolled around, and I'm like, oh, crap, we're not going to make it. And I got a call that week from my brother, who has a condo up in Salt Lake right next to the Delta Center. And he goes, hey, I helped coach him get into multiple investment properties. And he bought this one that was awesome during COVID and was exploding. So I knew how well it did. And he called me and he goes, hey, there's a property just below mine that's for sale. And I said, okay, I'm going to figure out how to get it. I found an investor that covered the down payment. And after getting turned down twice, that the property was under contract, we finally got it. And as soon as we got it, within those next 2 years, it jumped a couple $100,000 in value. But I had to have the mindset that we were going to do it. Even though I didn't know how, I had no idea how we were going to make it happen. But we did. We found it. We threw it out to the universe and made it happen.
Wow, I love that. When I first got into real estate, the Adamses, we're not a very financially dominant crowd. You know, the last Adamses that did well were John and John Quincy. That gives you a
Hey, I'm related to them. Are you?
say, yeah, I have.
We're related.
Oh my gosh.
For real. John Adams is like my fifth grade uncle or grandfather.
Oh wow, we're practically twins.
Wow.
The thing that I learned, a coach that I had talked about your financial thermostat.
Yeah.
And when they first came to me and they said, hey, Rob, this year you're going to make 6 figures. And I'm like, 6 figures? And he's like, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I'm like, oh.
Those are figures.
That's what that means. It never even occurred to me mathematically you're going to do 6 figures this year. My financial thermostat was set so stinking low.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about this, like shifting your financial thermostat, your belief that you can invest in properties, that you have the power to do that, it's a generational healing that has to happen. How do you do that? How are you able to like insert that confidence? Because Because I can do it means you can do it doesn't normally work, because you're a pretty smart guy. Like you come across like, okay, this guy's got it together. He's doing this and that and the other. Like you're exceptional. If you're not like me.
And you get that a lot. It really is. And part of my process is I have to share my story. I have to let them know they're not alone, that I've been there. I've had those thoughts of, what are you doing? You're not good enough to provide for your family. You've been laid off 5 times. What an idiot. What's wrong with you? And it takes somebody holding their hand. And that's why I have a job, is holding their hand, saying, okay, take out the emotion. Let's look at your finances. Guess what? This is a number. This is a tool. Some people have more. Some people have less. Some people have gone to the hardware store and can afford to buy more.
Yeah.
How do we buy that first tool? How do we get there?
Step one.
Step one. And step one is tracking your finances. I have people that I've coached that the first question I ask is, how much money do you make? And they said, I don't know. My job puts money in the bank and I spend it till it's gone. And so the first thing we do is start tracking that. We start seeing how much is coming in, how much is going out. Start tracking. It sounds basic, but I make them write it down.
Yeah.
Write down everything you spend during the day. And if sometimes you see Starbucks on there 5 times for $9 a piece. Well, how do you save money? Well, maybe take your first cup of coffee at home instead of going to Starbucks. Or for us, it was with 4 kids, we love to go to Red Robin. And I love Red Robin. Those fries, they were awesome. But with 4 kids, I remember when they brought the bill one time, it was $80.
Yeah.
And I'm going, that was French fries and hamburgers. So what we did is we still wanted to take the kids out, but we went to In-N-Out instead, and it was $35.
Yeah.
So the kids still got French fries and hamburgers. We went out. They had a good time. I don't think they noticed the difference. Now, my wife and I will go to Red Robin together on date night and not spend $80.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it doesn't take much to hit $80 at Red Robin.
And I think that's really key. The first thing is really knowing where you're currently at. And if you don't know where you're at, it doesn't matter where you want to go. And we talked about this ourselves, but point A, you got to know where point A is. Yeah. And if you're deceiving yourself, and that's true not only in, financial planning, but it's true in everything.
Yeah.
And so it's really, and I was listening to Jordan Peterson today, and he was talking about, if you're going through, depression, if you're suicidal, if you're, stress and anxiety, you find that one thing and do that one little thing. And he said, some people, they can't make dinner, but they'll put the fork on the table, and then they'll put the fork away. And that one little thing, if you build on that, and then it gives you a little momentum. And it starts to create, maybe now you do the dishes. And then you put the coffee cups where they need to go instead of just strewing around the kitchen. That one little thing, and knowing where you're at is, I think, so important.
I think, too, I've lost 130 pounds. Did you know that about me?
I did.
Lost 130 pounds. And the way that it first started, there was a doctor that had to call me out. He's like, if you keep it up, you're going to be dead by the time you're 40.
Wow.
And I needed that. I didn't need a doctor to say, seems like you've got a little bit of a weight problem. I need someone to tell me, you're about to die, buddy.
Wake up.
And the first thing I did is I went out and found a dietitian, and she told me, write down everything that you eat. Just
write it down.
Just like your budget, right? Just not your budget, your
calories.
Your calories. And I would write down, and I would just be surprised. Oh, that was a handful of M&Ms over here and a thing over there. And just the consciousness of my calories, I lost a tremendous amount of weight just by, holy crap, I'm eating all the time, unconsciously. And I think I spend unconsciously. I use spending as a drug almost. Like I'm having a crummy
Retail
day.
therapy.
Retail therapy. I need a new
true.
part for my motorcycle. That'll make me feel better, and it doesn't.
That means you have to fix the motorcycle when it comes, so it sits on the counter. And part of our coaching is giving them the retail therapy if they need it. It's let's hit a goal first. You hit this goal, what do you want to do? You want to go out to eat? Like my wife and I, it's funny, we had a goal for the business. And we went to Costco and bought those Ruth's Chris gift cards. They're 20% off. I'm the finance guy. I'll still eat there, but I'm going to make sure I get a good deal on it. And we've kept those. and we hit the goal. Now we're going to go to dinner. But that was something small for us. And if you give those little rewards, it makes it easier. It's like a diet. If you would have started out saying,
No more sugar.
no more sugar, you're done.
Yeah.
No more sugar, no more milk, no more anything. And you got to work out 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's like,
Impossible.
whatever. It's not happening. You're going to go pound a whole dozen Krispy Kremes tomorrow
Yeah.
and just squish them together like a sandwich and eat them. You're like, yeah, forget you.
Covered in Oreo dust.
Yes. Covered in maple syrup. You got syrup?
Oh, man. Yum.
I'm
That's my
hungry
Red Robin.
now.
Yeah.
Is it because you crave the thing that you cannot have?
You can. But if you have a reward and you know you're going to get there, when you get there, you may go, guess what? We don't need it. Maybe let's wait for the next one. And part of it, it's accountability. You became accountable to yourself by writing it down. You didn't even have to tell your dietitian. And a lot of people laugh because when I'm coaching them, we look at their finances. They open up the towel and everything's there. It's like, and I hear it all the time. They're like, okay, we're meeting with Matt. We got to let him know about this. Well, little secret. I don't care how much you spend. But when you start acknowledging it, you're going to go, okay, we've got 85 streaming services.
Yeah.
Which ones can we cut out? Like my kids came to me the other day and said, hey, Dad, can we get a new streaming service? And I said, which one are you cutting out? You cut one out, we'll get another one. And you start acknowledging that. And again, I'm not sitting here telling you guys what to do because I'm perfect at it. I have to do this exercise myself on a quarterly. I'm doing it right now with all my finances. I just threw them all into QuickBooks. I'm categorizing everything so that we can sit down and know exactly where we are, because you will fall out of habit if you don't do it every single week or every single day. So I love coaching this because I'm doing what I coach.
Yeah.
And a lot of these banks now, they make it really easy. You can just log in and, export the whole file to you, and then it's all kind of bingo bango, and you can really quickly assess, wow, you're doing this every month, and categorize it out. Is that true?
It is. And
So you don't have to go through all your receipts.
No, you don't. And it makes it nice. Now, the caveat to that is if you're going to look at your bank, make sure you're using like one credit card or one debit card to do all of your grocery shopping or all of those home budgeting things, so that you can categorize them and pull them up in one location, unless you've got like QuickBooks or some other software that's going to throw them all together. Because I say that because I made that mistake. We had our Costco card and I had my Marriott card, and we used the Marriott card for everything. And then all of a sudden I realized we were $1,000 over our budget one month because we had started using our Costco card again. So we were using that card, and I thought I was on my game by categorizing it on the credit card's website. I'm like, yes, we're on. Then I realized that I was $1,000 over for the month.
Dang. All good things, Matt. Lots of good things. Shifting gears just a little bit. You are a cyclist.
I am. I love it.
How long have you been riding bikes? Get it? Shifting gears. You see how I did that?
You did. The shifting gears
Smooth.
was great.
Thanks.
And so I started doing it during COVID. I went out and bought a crappy road bike, and I was like, let's do this. And you'll laugh because the first time I went out, my neighbor said, hey, come ride with us if you're a cyclist. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a cyclist.
I own a bike.
I got a bike. So I show up in basketball shorts, a T-shirt, and tennis shoes.
Yeah.
And these guys show up in all their gear, nice bikes, and they're older than me. And I'm looking at them, and they're heavier than me. I'm like, yeah, I got this. I have never been so wrong in my life. They smoked me. I got home after, it was like a 25-mile ride. I couldn't hold their wheel. I couldn't keep up with them at all. And I'm like, this isn't going to happen again. How am I going to do this? And so, yeah, that was probably 2020, middle of 2020. And then I just started getting into it.
It's hard riding a bike with a mask on too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like, they say it's better training though. If you just breathe out of your nose. And
It's got amazing wind.
Yeah, but when your heart rate's at like 180, you're like, you just tip over.
Maybe that's what they're still doing, is they're wearing the mask going by. I'm like, oh, they're just training their lungs.
Yeah.
They're doing.
Yeah,
That's it.
It doesn't work very well, but it's interesting because cycling actually got me to start my own company.
Tell me more.
So I really got into cycling. I liked it. I wasn't a huge fan of running. Everybody said you got to just catch the bug. Well, I tried and tried and tried, and I just hurt everywhere after I ran.
Yeah.
I'm like, do I just not have a runner's body? I don't know. And so one year, a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you sign up for Lotaja? And it's a race. It's called Logan to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That's why it's called Lotaja. And
wow, how far is that?
It's 207 miles, and it's got over 8,000 feet of climb.
Whoa.
And so I'm looking at him going,
why would I do that?
You're insane. I said, for you guys that are motorcyclists, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do that on a motorcycle anytime you want. But
It's still a long ride on a bike.
it is.
2 hours I'm there.
Yeah.
You're still bow-legged at the end of the ride, and you can't walk. But I remember staring at the registration link for about a half hour, and I said, what the heck? Click. And you go into a lottery. So even though you registered, you're not sure that you're going to make it. And then they let you know a month later that you've made it. And at that point you have to pay. And it's non-refundable. So you're like, okay. But I clicked that. And so all summer long we rode our bike. We climbed the Nebo Loop to get that altitude. We'd ride down to Gunnison and do a loop around Nephi. So we were doing 100 miles every Saturday or more on our bikes, which sounds stupid, incredibly stupid. But we did it over and over. And so we came to that first race.
And wait, meanwhile, you're still working with Pfizer or some other company?
I was working with a company at that time that was helping people with their finances. So I was out of the medical field. I was working with another company that did that, where I really started to love helping people with their finances. But I was working for somebody, and I didn't have much control. And that's why doing this bike race, I needed something. Like on those bad days, I would take off the middle of the day, go ride my bike for a couple hours, and then I came back and I was refreshed. I was ready to go. I had meetings with people that would kind of tear me down. And I was like, I got to get out, get on my bike, get this out of my head so I can focus. And so that pushed me to ride even more. And I did this race, and it was hard. It was all day long. We started at 6 a.m. and went till almost 8 o'clock at night on a bike.
Dang.
Wow.
And we're climbing, we're descending, we're riding, some of the prettiest scenery I've ever ridden through in my life. And I got to the end of that race, crossed that finish line, and it was the most incredible feeling I've ever had in athletics.
Wow.
And I played sports all through high school, but it was better than winning any football game.
And you're how old at this point?
That was in 2022, so I was 43 at that time. And I crossed that finish line, and it was physical, emotional, spiritual, everything. I was like, how do you get a feeling that's like this? And I said, I feel like I could do anything given. Most of that was adrenaline, but
sure.
At the end of that race, I'm like, I need to feel this way at work. I said, I help people with their finances. I get to feel a little portion of this. What am I missing? And I remember I was setting my goals with the company I was at. I had 3 goals. I had freedom of time, freedom of finances, and I wanted to hit the goals that my company set for me. But that goal never clicked in my mind. I never felt like it bonded to me, where freedom of time and freedom of finances bonded. And I was like, this is what I need. And then in January of 2023, I got a letter from my company that said they were going to cut my pay by 50 to 60% and try to switch me over to commission. And I'm like, I can't do this. I can't increase your guys' sales by 400% to hit a number so that I can just pay my bills again. What do I do? And I was stressed beyond belief. We went to Florida with a fam. That was the gift we gave our kids for Christmas. We went to Florida to see their grandparents on a mission.
And this was a year and a half ago.
Yeah, this was last year at this time. And when I got back from that trip, my wife's like, you are so stressed. You're never this stressed. You're a pretty mellow guy. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, because for me to leave a job was not an option. After being laid off that many times, you hold on to a job and you don't let go.
Yeah.
And my wife looked at me and said, you got to quit. You got to do your own thing.
Good for her. That was probably very scary for her too.
And the second she said that, this feeling came over me that was just so calming. I said, oh my goodness, that's what we need to do.
Wow.
We need to leave a company that I loved, something I loved doing, helping people. But it just wasn't a good thing. And it was funny, 2 days before then, I hired a mindset coach because I didn't know what I had gone to a therapist. I had gone to a business coach. A buddy of mine said, hey, you need to do a mindset coach. And I signed up for a program 2 days before and dropped a ton of money. And then 2 days later, I get let go. And I called her and I said, hey, I just left my job. And she goes, well, I told her what happened. And she said, well, your subconscious finally forced you to make the right decision. And I went, good, let's do it. And so I quit my job. And then 6 weeks later, we started Highline Financial Coaching. And we had 5 clients the day we started.
Wow.
And it was the best business decision I have ever made. I am grateful every day for my other company pushing me out.
Wow.
We've had a few of our guests that have been on, and they talk about these junctures in their lives, that this crisis, with such gratitude. It's interesting to hear this is like a reoccurring theme in these men's and women's lives. It's just like, and then the unthinkable happened. Thank God that it happened.
And every day it's like, I am so grateful for this. People are like, are you mad at what happened? And I'm like, no. If they wouldn't have done this, I would have never left.
Yeah. Still be there.
Yeah.
Stressed.
Yep.
Miserable.
Well, and I told you I wanted that feeling that I got at the end of that bike race, and I had it most of the year in 2023. Now, it was our first year, so financially we're digging into the reserves, but I wasn't stressed. I had 1 week during the year where I started to stress a little, and everything worked out.
Yeah, you're building equity in the business.
Yeah.
So what do you do to manage that stress? I was told by when I was a young man, your ability to be successful, Rob, is equal to, but not greater than, your ability to manage stress.
Yeah.
What do you do besides riding bikes?
I have 3 non-negotiables that I do every week. My non-negotiables, the first one.
Taking notes here.
Yeah. The first one is every Wednesday, my wife and I spend time together working out. We go down to a track or we work out. We do something together Thursday morning or Wednesday morning. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. That's one of my non-negotiables. I won't schedule anything during that. I also have a non-negotiable of riding my bike. I get 2 to 3 rides in a week. And I like doing one of those alone. I'll put on, for me, I put something on more spiritually based. It may be the scriptures. It may be something more spiritually based for the first half so I can get into that zone. My mind opens up. I feel like I'm feeling inspiration or whatever it is that you believe in. And then on the way back from my rides, I turn music on, and more quiet music. It's not really ramp me up music. It's just
more meditative,
and I get in my zone. And then Friday mornings, my wife and I go to our temple together again, and it's just to clear the air, have that time together with my wife. She's my business partner. We both are trying to figure out how to run our family, run our business. And those are 3 of my non-negotiables. I don't schedule things on those days. And we do them because if I don't, I will schedule something every single week during those times.
You're acting with intention instead of just, you're a meaningful, specific, and not a wandering generality.
Well, and when I worked for somebody, I wasn't able to do that. What boss is going to let you off on Wednesday and Friday morning to do something that is considered personal? To me, it's business because I have to clear my mind. I think it was Steve Jobs that said that no great idea comes sitting at the desk or in the office. You got to be out. You got to be doing other things. And when I'm on my bike, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the answer I needed for this person's finances. This is what we need to do. And then I go back and we're able to shift and do that. And then I spend time with my kids because I realized when we created the business that I say my why for what I do is my family, but that why was useless unless I had time to be able to be with my family. I need it. So my why is time, so that I can truly be with my family and spend time. So being a business owner, you guys understand, I call it the 15-hour flexible day. I'll work from early morning, late at night, but if I need to take off and go to the school or watch a basketball game of my kid or go to the dance recital, I will. And then I'll come back and do what I need to at that point.
Wow.
That's
Those
some
are
solid. Yeah, that's some solid
nuggets right there.
What? We're related. We just found out.
Wait.
I think I may be related as well.
Yeah. If you've been in Utah longer than...
It's like
let's just switch glasses.
No.
Here, put the black ones on. I want to wear these just for a minute.
See who's more blind.
Oh, he is definitely more blind.
Well, I can give you my contacts, but mine are just as bad. So
Take those glasses off that big head.
you're going to stretch them out.
I don't know.
All right. Okay. So focus for a second.
Yeah, those are some good nuggets
Yeah,
there.
Matt, those are solid. I think that we could apply that. Anyone could take any of the things. It doesn't have to be working out with your wife or going to the temple or a bike ride, but having non-negotiables that are for your physical or mental health, both sometimes, is paramount. Yeah, and it's necessary. Also, the traveling, getting away and doing the thing. There's a tremendous amount of value in that. We at the American Masterminds, we ride our motorcycles together. And when we go on the longer rides, there's amazing conversations that happen where Trent will say something to me, and I will think about it the whole time until we get to the next gas stop or whatever it is. And then I'll be like, you know what, Trent, I was thinking about what you said, and not necessarily with Trent. It hasn't happened, but in our groups, it's happened with Scott. We've sat down and gone over things, and I'm just like, hey, I was really thinking about what you said earlier, and this is what came to me during the ride. It's this weird, like, getting into the vortex type of thinking where I'm not thinking about anything else other than riding my motorcycle, and boom, here it shows up, this idea. And I'm not even pedaling that hard.
Well, it's funny. People are like, what do you think about on your bike that whole time? And I'm like, you'd be surprised. I figure by the end of a long 6 or 7 hour bike ride, I can fix every problem in the world by that point. But you get into those deep thoughts. You're talking with your friends. Like, we'll talk when it's if we're climbing an easy climb, and then we'll be pushing it really hard and have to be in a single file line, and you're thinking about it going, wait a minute. You get into those deep thoughts, and it clears my mind. I don't get so jumbled up, and like you said, those non-negotiables are huge. Whatever it is, if it's during COVID, it was us going to Swig. When we were trapped in our house, we had to go to Swig once or twice a day just to have our caffeine fix and sugar fix to get out of the house. But that's how we started doing those non-negotiables.
Do you sit down at the beginning of the week and plan those out, or is it just like a rolling, you put those big blocks every week, no matter what, that's a done foregone conclusion? Or do you sit down with your wife and plan it out every week? What do you do?
They're in my calendar. I just block it out on my calendar. Every Friday at this time,
load up.
We do this. Yeah. Every day that we go on our bike ride, it's blocked out. And then some are dead set, non-negotiable. And then some of them are, okay, if we can't get to it right now, we're going to fit it in the week. Those are the ones that we'll figure out. We'll go out with friends during the weekend. I'm a sociable guy. I like being around people where my wife may not be as much. So I had to figure out, when do I go out to eat with people? So I have some of my own non-negotiables, and then I have some that I do together with my wife and family.
Very cool. Great advice. As we are talking about your journey through life and these lessons that you've learned, one of the questions I like to ask, and I want to ask you this, is if you could go back and, here's this kid rolling out of BYU. He's been working now for 3 years. He's killing it. Mm-hmm. You have a chance to put your arm around this kid and pull him aside and whisper in his ear. What would you tell him? What advice would you give him?
Don't stress about the little things.
And that is always the answer. You know, Scott, that is always the answer.
At that point, I had a 1-year-old. And watching my kids grow up, watching my wife and I mature in our marriage and our relationship, there's so many times that you get mad over something that doesn't matter. So doesn't matter. And you almost mess up the more important thing by getting mad over something small. I was trying to tell my 17-year-old this the other day. He made something so small look so big. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen when a big problem comes? It's got to be bigger than this. And it's take the time to enjoy the moment. It's even if you don't have money, whatever that is, go figure out what that small thing is. If you and your significant other can only go to the gas station and get a drink, do it. Who cares if it's $2?
Yeah, enjoy it.
Enjoy it. I mean, if you're struggling, don't find the most expensive restaurant you can, but go find something that gets you out, gets you to see that it's not as bad as it is.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, 99% of the time, it's not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah. I've started asking myself, is this going to matter in a week?
Yeah.
Is this going to matter in a year? Is this going to matter in 5 years? Like I weigh these things in, and it really is just like, this won't even matter tomorrow. Like,
no, it's not going to matter before I go to bed tonight.
Yeah. And once you start to do that, then all the emergencies kind of fade away because everything is an emergency these days.
Yeah.
That's the world that we live in. You know, the second answer that we get on that question is there's always these two answers. Number one, don't stress out. And the second one is always trust. Trust yourself.
Yeah. Trust yourself because you're probably right. You have your best intention in mind. We are guided by a greater power regardless of what your beliefs are. My belief is there's a greater hand in my life and it's always going to work out for me. Even if it doesn't work out for me, that's how it was meant to work out. Yeah. And I have a mantra that the universe is conspiring for my good. Yeah. And I say conspiring because it's regardless of my best efforts. Yeah. This is what I think I want.
Despite yourself, despite your shadow and everything else.
Yeah. What I think is important because I get exactly what I'm supposed to get. So those are the two answers. I just want to share the other one with you because it's interesting. I've asked this question to a lot of people, and it's one of those two. Well, it's interesting. It's life happens for you, not to you. And it's taken me, I'm 45 years old, and I swear it took me till I was 44 to start looking at life like that. Okay, this happened. That may look bad, but how does it help me? And I know Rob and I, we did some of that mindset stuff in different locations of the world, yet we both sat down and had lunch and we're coming up with the same answers. Yeah. It was incredible. Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting that here we are, I'm a little bit older than you and Trent's a little bit older than both of us, but that it's interesting to note that even now, like here you are 44, you said 45, and it's just like you're like, I'm just barely figuring this out. Like the older I get, the less I know, and the more I'm realizing like I am just barely getting the handle on this mechanism and how things work and what the law of reciprocation is and all of these natural laws that have governed my life from the beginning that I'm like, nah, not me. That's your problem. You know, that's amazing. I thought I would know. I thought I'd be smarter by now.
Yeah. Hey, if it was one book that you were to recommend to people on any subject, what would it be? It's called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor.
Great book.
Behind any spiritual books you read, this was the most influential book in my life.
Really?
Yeah, wow. Because I had never thought about it. It talks about him. Sean Acor was a Texas kid that went up to Cambridge and went to Harvard. And when he was at Harvard, one of the first things he noticed was there was more people depressed at Harvard than anywhere he'd ever seen in the world. And he goes, why is this? We're at one of the most elite colleges on earth. And what happened was you had the top 1% of the 1% there at Harvard. And the first day they got graded and half of them fell below the top 50%. And they had never felt that before.
They'd always been the top.
They had always been the top. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. You take some of the best in the world, you put them together, and half of them are the worst at the school they're at, even though they're still
the best in the world.
Best in the world. And so he spent the next 12 years researching happiness at Harvard. And some of his studies, I mean, we believe that the next paycheck's going to make us happy, or the next promotion, or the next house we sell, or the next client I bring in.
Next
That's
set of
what's
clothes.
If I drive this car, I'm going to be happy. But he talks about how happiness brings the success you want.
I want to read that again.
Oh, I listen to it on Audible at least once a year, or read it. I found it at DI the other day, and I realized I had given away my copy. I grabbed it just so it shows behind me in my YouTube videos. I'm like, I grabbed it at DI for a couple bucks, and I'm like, there it is.
He talks about the basics there too at Cambridge. This is the part that kind of got my attention. He's like, we're in this beautiful area where the school is beautiful.
Oh, incredible.
And the food, the cafeteria. It's cafeteria food, but it's good food.
Yeah.
And where they're living is not the best in the world, but it's pretty much the best in the world. And these people are just walking around miserable, and they're nexting themselves to death. I know I'm repeating what you just said, but it really makes you think, like, I have a lot of great things in my life that I don't appreciate. Great book.
Yeah, it was interesting because I actually filled out a form on his website. And I had somebody contact me, and they're like, hey, I loved your story on his website. And they had posted my story for a couple months on Sean Acor's website.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. I caught it like the last day before they took it down because I had no idea. But
very cool.
It was a good one. I'll give you one more that I love.
Yeah.
Is 10X is easier than 2X. This was for business, and it's Dan Sullivan is the coach, and then I think it's Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah.
He was a BYU student that's a writer, and it blew my mind. One of the things he talks about in there is people that double the amount of time they take off of work will double their income even quicker. And it just talked about how it's easier to look at your business. How do I grow it 10 times than 2 times? Because 2 times just means I work harder. 10 times means I put things in place and other people to help me out to get to that level. And that one was huge when I listened to it. That helped me, my eyes blow up and get more excited about my business.
Dan Sullivan's one of my favorites. Have you
He's
read
awesome.
a lot of his? Like, he's the Who Not How.
Yeah, and Gap in the Game.
Gap in the Game, one of my favorite books. I read that one probably once a quarter.
Yeah, and Benjamin Hardy wrote both of those for Dan Sullivan. I love them. They're 3 of my favorite books. I've got them all on Audible.
Yeah.
And when I'm working out, I'll throw those on, and I'm like, yeah, where's my notebook?
Yeah, so good. In the Audibles, the author, he's kind of a mentee to Dan Sullivan, and he'll write this, like, this is what I learned, and this is a story about it, and this happened, and then he'll have Dan Sullivan come on, and he interviews him. And so, Dan, tell us about the time when the thing in the deal happened. And Dan's like, well, and he's old school. He's been around for a minute, and he has just this wealth of knowledge. And then you've got this young guy that's kind of like putting all of his thoughts in some kind of an order, because Dan doesn't do that. He's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear these 2 brains working together. It's fun to listen to. I enjoy that.
Yeah, it's
Audible.
Incredible on Audible. Yeah, I listened to them all. I just did Gap in the Game, and I was blown away. I'm like, this I should have read right after the Happiness Advantage, because it tied right into it.
I spent a lot of time in the Gap.
Yeah, so did I. A
still
lot
do.
of time.
Even though I've read the book, I still catch myself thinking, wow, if I only...
Yeah.
And I'll be happy.
What is the gap?
The gap is you're thinking of your life in a deficit. You're not living in abundance, basically. And if you're living in the deficit, you're always going to be like, as soon as I hit, like we were saying, as soon as I get that deal, as soon as I make this amount of money, then I'll give myself permission to be happy, to be successful, to be whatever your definition is. If you live in the gain, and this is the thing I like about this book, and of course you understand what the gain is, I don't need to tell you. The book talks about hacks to keep you in the gain. It doesn't just talk about the ideas, because we get that. Like what I just said to you, well, no shit, that's
we should do this every day.
Everyone knows that. How do I do it? That's what the book talks about, is the how I'm going to stay in the gain. And I need to read that one again too. That's a good one. At night, when you fall asleep, I do this every night. As you're falling asleep, you think to yourself, the victory. What was my big victory today? How did I win today? What was my success? And you think about that as you're falling asleep, because our natural, my natural wiring is, as I'm falling asleep, like, oh man, I should have called Matt. I wish that conversation that I had with Trent would have went better. This is what I should have said. I ended up shitting all over myself until I fall asleep. It's a terrible way to fall asleep. But if I fall asleep in the gain, how do I wake up? What do I dream about? What do I think about? It's amazing.
Yeah, to think it is to create it, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's one of the things that my coach had taught me, my mindset coach, is that's when I manifest, is right before I go to bed, right as I wake up in the morning. So I'm picturing in my head what I'm going to do. I'm going to accomplish this, and this. And these are the three or four things I manifest. I just told myself the 3 wins I had for the day. And they say you wake up ready to jump into that next day. But if you go to bed thinking about all your losses, you wake up going, oh, guess I'm going to have a loss today.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this wrong.
Oh, man, I have to go to work, and I have to have that conversation. No, you get to. Shifts it all, the whole energy. One of the things I started doing with the gap and the gain is when I wake up in the morning, and I've got a pretty good morning routine, but I've started writing in, I've got an intention journal.
Yeah.
And I write down the date, and I write, today my intention is, and I think, what is it that will best serve me in the gain? And today, it was very simple. It was a very simple intention, but I set that intention every day because I want to live intentionally. It's the secret to living a life of fulfillment, a life of success. It doesn't matter how much money personally I have in my account. If I don't feel good, it doesn't matter. And I've been wildly successful and unhappy. I've been in real estate long enough to meet a lot of these wildly successful real estate agents who are miserable. Just miserable humans because they don't live intentionally and they're in the gap all the time.
Well, I remember when we had lunch together, we talked about being intentional with everything on our to-do list. And you said you were more successful at accomplishing things because you didn't put 50 things on your list. You said, today, these are my top 3 things I'm going to accomplish.
Yeah.
And if I get these things done, I succeeded today.
Yeah.
And the happiness advantage talks about that.
Yeah.
They're like, don't make a list of 85 items you got to accomplish that day. Do 3, and anything that you get done after that is a win.
Yeah. 12 was my number. 12 is I have to get 12 things done every day. And in that book, it's like 3. And I'm like, 3? So I've been writing down.
Overachiever.
Yeah. Well, I've been writing down my 12 things, and I'm like, okay, which 3 are the most important things? And that's been really empowering me. If I get those other, 8 things done or whatever it is, yay. But these 3, these are non-negotiables. This is going down today. And it gives me some grace because my lists before were the front and the back of my mini business plan, my MVP every day.
It gets more full every day.
Every day.
Yeah. And like what Jordan Peterson was talking about today on his podcast was just do one thing. Just even if it's one thing, if you're in that position where, you can't do 3 or 12 or, a whole checklist, do one. It's like that one Marine or Navy captain or general that spoke about just make your bed, get up and make your bed. Make your bed.
That's a great talk.
If that's the one, I love that talk. That's a great talk.
And I've noticed when I do those 3 things, I can get the 85 things done that day because I focused on those top 3. And then after that, I go through them even quicker because I'm like, okay, I did the most important things for the day. The rest of this is easy.
Yeah.
And I blow through them so much quicker. But if I don't do that, I stare at them and go, well, maybe that one's not as important. I'll go to the next one. And I just stare at them and don't do them.
So if you're doing 3, do you do the hardest one first?
Sometimes I'll do the easiest just to accomplish something right away.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I need to pay this bill. Click, done. Yeah. Now I'm succeeding, and I build up to that harder one. But sometimes I need to do the hard one right away and get it off my plate.
Yeah. And it gets rid of procrastination. On my list is always something that I should have done. This should have happened last week. This should have been done. You know what I mean? And it's no longer acceptable. Like, this is getting done.
Well, and sometimes I will take the one that's been on the list for 3 weeks and I'll cross it off. I'm like, it didn't matter. I didn't need to finish it, so get it off my list. If it's important enough, it'll come back.
Yeah. So I call it the 3 Ds. Can I tell you about that? Do it, delete it, or delegate it.
Yeah.
And if it keeps rolling up again and again, and it's important that it needs to be done, it's time for me to hire the right person, whatever that means.
Repeat that one more time.
Do it, delete it, or delegate it. Those are your only 3 choices when it comes to your MVP, mini business plan. It's powerful. I keep it in my pocket. I just threw mine away because I've accomplished everything on there. I fold it in half. I have a ritual. I fold it in half long ways, and I throw it in the garbage with like some flair, like,
Yeah.
bam.
I did it.
Kicked your ass.
Yeah. Well, I started putting the
Love it.
little sticky on my computer, because there's a program on your computer. I've got a Mac, and so it's called Sticky, and it sits right on the top, and these are the things I'm accomplishing or I'm manifesting right now. I look at it, focus on it for a minute, get it done.
Yeah.
Sticky.
That's a good one to do. I'm a 3x5 card guy. I've got to have it in my pocket. It has to poke my hand when I reach for my keys. Like,
Slice it all the way up.
Yeah, it's got to be annoying in my life for me to give it the attention it deserves. I'm glad that you have that routine as a entrepreneur. There's no one there that's gonna pat you on the back. There's no one there that's gonna check in with you. Hey, did you get your job done today? Good job, buddy. That doesn't happen. It's you or nothing. And these hacks, the MBP, the intentional living, is the way that I have. And I always look at myself kind of in different personalities. It's very, maybe I need therapy, but there's the boss Rob and the employee Rob. And boss Rob gets excited about a lot of things, man. We're going to get this done today, and we're going to get this done, and we're going to get this done. But employee Rob's like, I just want to read my book and lay in the hammock for a minute. I'm going to go for a bicycle ride, maybe, whatever it is. And so I have to become congruent with what has to happen today and what is going to happen today. And the MVP and intentional living is my hack. That's what's really worked well for me to get more done. If you are an entrepreneur, and I'm saying this, and you don't have an idea, a mini business plan, or the big three, or whatever it is, you will end up floating along and failing, in my perspective. Would you agree, Trent?
Yeah, totally.
Because things have to be done, and there's no one that's going to have you do it. And so unless you have some kind of discipline or routine, then it won't get done. And then you're going to end up sitting on the couch and wondering, why am I still broke and living at home in my mom's basement,
Well, and I think about, like, in my life, had I applied some of the things that I've been doing, in the last, 3 or 4 years for my whole life, where would I be? And then I just have to be grateful for, I'm doing it now. I started now. And I'm counting my calories now, so I'm on that road.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the things a friend of mine taught me years ago is when you are an entrepreneur, one of the things I'll do is I record myself. I do a Zoom call with myself, and I say, hey, this is what we did last week. This is what we're going to do this week. And then when I watch it next Monday, I'm looking at the notes and saying, okay, we got this, and this done. And even though you're just talking with yourself, it feels like you're accountable to yourself because you've got it recorded. You're watching it, and it only needs to be 5 minutes. And you see it, you hear it, you practice it. If you miss something the week before, well, that's the first thing we're going to do this week. And it's helped me significantly when I'm in one of those ruts.
What a great idea.
It's my Monday morning meeting with myself.
That's boss Matt telling employee Matt, get on the stick.
Because when you said that, I'm like, wait, that's what I have to look at it from that point of view. I'm the boss today, but employee Matt needs to get some stuff done this week so that the boss Matt can continue moving forward.
So let me ask you this now. You're watching it next Monday. You're watching it, and you're looking yourself in the eye. You ever think you should get fired?
Every week, but it's boss Matt won't fire employee Matt because they got to live together.
Yeah, it's a deal. But I've often thought that before, like, you know what, today, if I was going to give myself a review, there's a door.
Fired.
There's the door, buddy.
You're fired.
You're out.
Yeah, you're out.
There's that pink slip.
Yep, here it is, signed, sealed, and delivered.
So when a day like that happens, what do you do to get back in the saddle? How do you gird up the loins, as they say here locally?
It's you got to forgive yourself that week. You look at it, and even in my Monday morning meetings, I will say, you know what? I should have had that this week. I'm going to get it done this week. I saw the importance of it, and then sometimes I even give myself excuses. And I'm like, wait, that was a stupid excuse. I'm just going to get it done this week, and then the next week I can make boss Matt happy, and we're good again.
It's interesting when it comes to excuses and your boss, Matt, and your employee, Matt, because you start to look at why did I make that excuse? Ultimately, for me, the excuse is always fear-based. The reason I didn't call Matt was because I'm worried that he's going to tell me no. I'm worried that this appointment's going to go poorly. I'm worried that I can't handle this business. I'm fearful of the success. I'm fearful of the failure. I'm fearful. Thank you. Of something. And when I start to identify that, it becomes very, I'm like crystallized in my efforts. Like, okay, this is something I need to work on. There's nothing like that accountability, that self-accountability to really get through your crap. Mm-hmm. Because when you work for someone else, you can tell all kinds of stories and everyone's going to be like, yeah, okay, that seems reasonable. But when it's you looking at you on Monday, there's no excuse.
Yeah. Well, there's the 5-second rule. Your brain gives you 5 seconds to make that decision. So if I'm making a cold call, I know I've got 5 seconds to dial, hit, call, and then I'll do it. Yeah. But if I give myself more than 5 seconds, I talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob doesn't want to talk to me today. Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't even call.
Yeah, you made up a whole conversation that never happened.
Yeah. Well, we had, with the magazine, there was a client that I was kind of my white well that I was going after. And I went in and they gave me the person's name I had to contact, and they didn't contact me. I called them, left a message. I sent them an email. They didn't get back to me. And I went in half a dozen times to see if this person was in the office, and they were never there. I'm like, okay, this person's avoiding me. You know the stories that are going on in your head. Well, finally I go in one day and say, hey, is the guy here? And they said, yeah, he is. And he came down. I started talking to him and I said, hey, I apologize if I bugged you or contacted you too many times. And he goes, I get so many messages, so many emails, I probably just missed it. Well, that next month they were in the magazine. They took my back cover for a couple of the issues, and my wife just laughed. She looked at me and she goes, you're one of the most persistent people I've ever met. I would have completely let that go, but I almost did let it go. In my head, I kept saying, yeah, they don't want to be in the magazine. They don't want to do this. And every time I've told myself that, I've been wrong.
Yeah. It's not about you. Isn't that interesting?
It's not about me, but I think it's about me every single time.
Every time.
I'm not good enough, or I didn't do this.
They must be mad. I must have, me. No,
they were busy.
They were busy.
Just like I am every day. And it was, my brother-in-law had told me this at one point. He said, 90% of what we worry about never happens.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, this is the 98% that never happens. I'm going to keep plugging along. And if I do make them mad, they're going to let me know. At least they know who I am at that point.
I'd like to quote one of my favorite philosophers right now, Mrs. Piggy. She said,
Kirby.
Yeah. She said to Kermit one time, she goes, worrying is like trying to solve a math problem by chewing gum. Miss Piggy.
Hey, voice of reason.
Yeah. I was like, I have never solved a math problem by chewing gum. I should quit worrying. It doesn't do any good at all. So I live by the Kermits the Muppets is that's my great.
Well, I feel like I've been through like a massive therapy session this podcast. I love it. This is great stuff. I'm feeling like hopeful, and I hope other people, that are watching will share, this podcast around. This is some really great stuff. Like I feel encouraged and motivated, but it's more of a sense of being able to flourish and really redirecting my thinking and my thoughts onto a book that I'd never even heard of, The Happiness Advantage. I'd never heard of that book.
Really?
Right? I've heard a lot of other ones, but and 10x is easier than 2x. So I'm going to really focus in on expanding my brain, laying down some new tracks.
Brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a great way to bring this to an end, by the way. Thank you very much, Trent. It's true. On the American Masterminds, our goal is to encourage people to think bigger, to dream bigger, to raise that financial thermostat. And you've been a great example, Matt. Appreciate you being on and sharing your wisdom with us. Yeah. We'd like to have you on again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. Well, thank you, guys. This was really a lot of fun. I've been on a lot of podcasts, and some of them you get done, and you're like, well, is that good? But you guys I love how you guys work together. I was edified, and I gained a lot out of this as well. So I appreciate you guys having me on. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
If somebody wanted to reach you, how would they contact you?
They can contact me through our website. It's highlinefinancialcoaching.com, or my email address is matt@highlinefinancialcoaching.com. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me and get some. If you just want to chat about your finances, there's no obligation. I chatted with 2 people driving up here about their finances, and one of them was almost in tears. I understand it's hard to talk about. I promise it's hard to talk about, but again, that's the first step. If you're willing to make the phone call, that's probably the hardest step you'll make.
Yeah.
And if somebody wanted to be in your magazine,
Yeah, the same. We've got magazines all over the state of Utah. I own South Utah County from Springville to Santaquin, and then I've got Park City, Heber, and Midway. So I have a little more leeway, but we're excited because we're just opening Davis County. So 2 of our zones are going to be in Davis County, and we've got a bunch of zones in Salt Lake County and Utah County, and then 2 down in St. George. So.
And we'll include all of the links. I'll get those from you in an email, all of your links and contact information, websites and whatnot, so that it'll be in the comments. Thank you for listening to the American Masterminds. We appreciate you tuning in. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. There's a tremendous value. We've got so many podcasts with great guests, just like Matt, that are sharing life hacks, the things that we've learned along the way. Tell your friends again about the American Masterminds. If there's someone that you would like us to interview, that would be a good one. Please let us know. We're always looking for good guests. And again, thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.